Tokoloshe. Okay. It's a word that's almost unknown in the West today. Maybe the best way to try and answer this would be to look at an eyewitness account from someone who's been fortunate, well, you could say that, enough to have seen one of these creatures for herself. Let me take you back. A bright, moonlit night in 1916 in South Africa. A black teenager named Tokoloshe was walking home to her parents' house in the Northern Cape Province town of DR. Suddenly, she saw a strange-looking object coming towards her from the distance. At first, she wasn't entirely sure whether it was an animal or a child. Turned out to be neither. It was a Tokoloshe. So what did this Tokoloshe look like? She describes it thus. He was short and fat with a fur cape or animal skin round his shoulders. His eyes were like lights. So, yellow, shining brightly and looking evil. He looked hard and angrily at me, otherwise took no notice. He was going to something much more important and was clearly in a great hurry. I shook with terror and watched him hurrying up the street. I wondered if any evil befell me or my people, but I think his thoughts were elsewhere, and he was too concerned with thinking about something else to worry about me. So from this description, we can make a fair stab of trying to answer our opening question. A Tokoloshe is a small hairy man, an African goblin with glowing eyes, a mini Bigfoot, or a troll. So does this mean that the Tokoloshe is a creature of cryptozoology? Not necessarily, but it's possible to interpret the legend this way. Problem is, it's also possible to interpret the legend in the light of many other subjects. Is the Tokoloshe a flesh and blood animal? Maybe, but probably not. Is he a ghost or a poltergeist? Perhaps. Is he an alien being? Possibly. Is he a creature of witchcraft? Maybe. Or is he a zombie, according to some? Or is he, against all prior expectations, a small, morph-like figure made out of cheap porridge and sent out to perform an evil wizard's wishes? Well, that's what he may be, according to some. The Tokoloshe is all those things, and more. He's real and fictional at the same time. Whilst we're never going to be able to capture one and put it on display in a zoo, he's believed in a matter of literal physical fact, right the way across sub-Saharan Africa. He might not be literally real. He possesses an element of social reality nonetheless, because people believe in him and alter their actions and way of life accordingly. That means he is sort of real, whilst at the same time being wholly fictional. Doesn't it? As these facts would suggest, the world of Tokoloshe is a very confusing one. And that's the point. He's no single thing in and of itself. He's a generalized spirit being whose presence can be invoked to explain all manner of different phenomena, whether supernatural in nature or not. The Tokoloshe is an all-purpose African entity. Has your wife given birth to a dead child? Blame the Tokoloshe. Perhaps on the other hand, your wife's gone off you sex-wise. That's because she's getting enough loving from the Tokoloshe, who's more of a man than you ever were. See the ghosts and the pebbles hurled at you by invisible hands? More Tokoloshes. Having bad luck? Well, it's hardly surprising. A witch has sent her Tokoloshe out to get you after all. What you need to do is get a Tokoloshe of yourself to counteract the negative effects of this deadly curse. The list's endless. Nonetheless, the average Southern African has a clear image of what a Tokoloshe is supposed to look like, if they were to come across one, as Tokoloshe did in 1916. Fair word of warning, this image isn't terribly suitable for children. The first thing you would notice about a Tokoloshe, if you were indeed to see one, would undoubtedly be its penis. Tokoloshe penises are proverbially large. So large, in fact, the creature is obliged to walk around everywhere with it slung over its shoulder, so it doesn't drag along the ground or weigh him down like a ball and chain, or even trip him up like a big pink skipping rope. Fortunately for his observer's modesty, most Tokoloshes are said to cover up their phenomenal members with a kind of sheepskin cloth termed a kaross, in order to protect it from coming to any harm. Basically, the ultimate penis sheath. But of course, as we all know, it's not the size that matters. It's how you make use of it. And Tokoloshes use theirs well. Being enthusiastic and committed rapists, the Tokoloshe is able to use the incredible instrument of his to open doors and act as a kind of periscope to keep a lookout for his enemies. He can even send it underground. Well, I pity the poor blackbird who thinks that that's a nice fat earthworm. Here we must learn a new word, Mashot-shapshani, which is almost as much of a mouthful as a Tokoloshe's male member would probably be. The term basically means to go under, and can be used as a name for a certain special power that Tokoloshes have. The ability to extend their penises magically to whatever length they like, and to send them burrowing underground to when they burst up to the bedroom floor of a sleeping woman, who the Tokoloshes then rape from some distance away, perhaps while putting their feet up and having a nice cup of tea. Whilst Tokoloshes are using this amazing power, it seems, their penises begin to acquire elastic qualities, and they also have the ability to use them as feelers or periscopes before they enter a household in order to check that the coast is clear. They can even use their magically extended penises to open doors, thereby facilitating the Tokoloshe's entrance into his victim's home, should he want the rest of his body getting in on the illicit action. Fear of this fearsome piece of weaponry has now become so great that women in southern Africa place piles of bricks beneath their beds at night in order to try and raise themselves up high off the ground, so that the Tokoloshe's penis will be unable to enter them. But perhaps that's enough about giant penises. Let us move on to less obscene matters. So big dick aside, what else would you see when you saw a Tokoloshe? Probably nothing at all, as they're often invisible in nature. This is surely why, right the way across Southern Africa, they are often to blame for poltergeist phenomena. It seems the Tokoloshe has its ultimate origin as a river deity of the Xhosa people in what's South Africa's Eastern Cape province, as can be seen in an 1893 haunting, which is said to have occurred near a river in the Mount Aleph district. A district surgeon named H.B. Maunsell was sent out by the British authorities, together with a native black constable, in order to investigate some curious goings-on at a kraal near the Umzibubu River. Stones, it seems, were being hurled at people by invisible hands, obviously causing some disquiet. Maunsell soon discovered these events had begun after a 15-year-old girl living on the kraal had gone down to a stream which ran into the river one day in order to fetch back some drinking water. Lying down at the edge of the stream for the drink herself, she was most disturbed to see a little old man lurking beneath the water. It was the Tokoloshe. The girl screamed and ran away, accompanied by the Tokoloshe, who had clearly taken something of a fancy to her. When she got home, she fainted, and after she came around, she began vomiting up bizarre substances such as lizard bones, skeletal dog toes, hairs from a dog's tail, and rather more suggestively, grey hairs from an old man's head, and small white pebbles of the sort normally seen by the river, the Tokoloshe's traditional lair. More typical poltergeist phenomena followed. The girl would be asleep on the mat when her blankets were pulled from her and thrown across the other side of the room by unseen forces. Worst of all were the showers of stones. These occurred inside the girl's hut and involved pebbles and rocks falling down to the thatched roof, either landing harmlessly on the floor or striking down upon the people inside them with great force and harming them. Weirdly, upon closer inspection, the thatching had no holes in it. The stones had materialised inside the hut at ceiling height and fell down from there. The girl at the centre of this haunting had been visited by a local witch doctor in order to be treated for some unspecified ailment, not long before her encounter with the Tokoloshe in the river. Monsell concluded from this that the man had hypnotised the girl and all her family and her neighbours, just to be thorough, into experiencing the ghostly phenomena for unknown reasons. Monsell had no doubt, however, they were all totally sincere in the account of what they said had occurred. Sometimes Tokoloshes are invisible, except the instances in which they're not. You know, as I said, they are pretty contradictory in nature. When they are actually seen, Tokoloshes are described as little brown, hairy, dwarf-like figures of less than 1 metre in height, much like certain kinds of half-sized fairy, such as boggarts or brownies in old European traditions. Although unlike the Western brownie or boggart, the Tokoloshe appears to only have a single buttock, for reasons that are probably best left unknown. A variant, however, has the Tokoloshe being a little old man rather than a hairy monster. Occasionally he is also alleged to possess only one arm and one leg, or to look something like a miniature bear. In fact, some sources specifically speak of the monster resembling a teddy bear, and children in southern Africa sometimes give their cuddly toys the pet name Tokoloshe. Aww. Hopefully most cuddly toys come without any massive outsized genitalia attached. Well, I'd buy it. They are also said to speak with a lisp, and sometimes have large outsized heads with a bony ridge running across the top, which they use to headbutt cattle with, killing them. Others say they have a big hole in their head for storing one of the magical pebbles which are said to lend them their powers of invisibility. Some informants speak of the arms and legs being short and muscular, totally out of proportion with the torso, and in their right hand, Tokoloshes are said to carry a big stick which they use to vanquish their foes. Some descriptions say they even have horns. These are the basic templates, but it seems that witnesses and Tokoloshe believers mix and match these various details from description to description. Well, after all, the Tokoloshe changes with the times. He's now even seen piloting UFOs! The most famous instance of this took place in 1994 at Ariel Primary School in the obscure Zimbabwean town of Ruwa. Here, during morning break time on September 16th, 62 pupils were playing outside. They were supervised by only one adult, one of the children's mothers, who was running a snack bar inside the school. She didn't see the UFOs, and when a boy ran in to tell her what was happening, she didn't believe him. Events began with 3 to 5 saucers being sighted along the path, laid out for them by some overhead power cables, one of which either landed or hovered just above the ground near one electricity pylon. A doorway opened in the craft, and 2 small humanoid figures appeared. They're described not unlike Tokoloshes, about 1 metre tall, covered with black hair, hardly any nose, and small slits for mouths. Of course, they were also dressed in large, black, shiny, diving suit-like gear, and had large black eyes shaped like rugby balls. The beings jumped out from their craft and began running across the bush-covered field next to the school playground in a bizarre fashion. Their movements seemed confused somehow, and they also appeared to be moving in slow motion. The entire cohort of kids stopped what they had been doing and stood transfixed with the creatures before them, particularly their large, hypnotic black eyes. In this hypnotic state, the pupils claimed they were receiving telepathic messages from the aliens about the dangers of pollution and the possible forthcoming end of the world. Well, the aliens would have voted green in the last election. Eventually, the entities returned to their craft, which lifted itself up about 3 meters into the air and disappeared. Many of the school children involved interpreted this encounter in terms of demons, ghosts, and tokoloshes. In the West, we would have invoked extraterrestrials. Were these entities really tokoloshes? Sure, they were hairy, but since when have tokoloshes been interested in environmental issues and worn wetsuits? It seems very likely that the children at Ariel Primary School saw something very strange one day and adapted their later interpretation of it all in order to fit in with their own pre-existing beliefs about creatures from local demonology. These hairy UFO pilots were seen as being tokoloshes only because they were encountered in southern Africa. If witnessed elsewhere, they would have surely been different. Rather than alien beings, why shouldn't tokoloshes be examples of entirely ordinary and well-known indigenous African animals which have just been misidentified? Well, seeing as the speech is being made under the auspices of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, we had better take this possibility into account. Let's look at the first written account of a tokoloshe from a white person, that of a Mrs. Minnie Martin, the wife of a colonial official living in what is now Lesotho. This appeared in a 1903 book, Basuto Land, Old Name for Lesotho, Its Legends and Customs. The account goes as follows. Some years ago, before I knew of the existence of Tokoloshe, I was obliged to go to our cowshed rather late one evening to investigate disturbances amongst the cows. The moon was full at the time and shining brightly. The shed was at the bottom of the garden, some way from the house. I went accompanied by my native nurse girl and our big black retriever. Nothing occurred until we were returning, when suddenly we heard what I took to be a dog running from the residency through the dead leaves in the garden towards us. I barely said, "What's that?" when I heard the ping of the wire fence and saw, crossing the path, not a dozen yards in front of us, a little black creature about the shape and size of a boy of 6. The night being clear and bright, there was no mistaking the fact it was a human figure of some sort. It ran with a peculiar shuffle, moving its head from side to side, straight through our garden into the darkness beyond. When my girl saw it, she caught hold of me in terror, but uttered no words. Dog, on the contrary, gave vent to a sound, half growl, half howl, and tore off into the house, where we followed as quickly as possible, and found him under my little son's bed, from whence he refused to stir. This was, to my mind, conclusive proof I had not been imagining things, as was said to me when I described what had occurred. For the dog is a really plucky one, and I had never seen him afraid before. My girl told me we had seen Tokoloshe. So, if Minnie really did see a little black creature there behind the cowshed that fateful night, what was it? Whilst the description isn't incredibly detailed, it's of sufficient quality to allow for some speculation. One, the fact that the Tokoloshe was about the size and shape of a 6-year-old boy could easily be taken as implying that's all it was. Perhaps a little black child was trespassing on the Martins' home for some reason. This is a reasonable possibility. Another, perhaps more likely explanation is that it was simply a misidentified monkey or ape of some kind. Some simians deal with black or dark fur, some are bigger than baboons, some have no tails, and some have hands and feet that could be taken as being human-looking. So the idea that the Tokoloshe on the farm that night was simply a stray monkey is not going to be an awful one either. Another animal that is actually mistaken for a Tokoloshe is the bush baby. Small, rather cute looking, kind of nocturnal primate with human-like prehensile fingers native to much of southern Africa. In May 2012, the corpse of a dead Tokoloshe being paraded for the cameras in a small South African village was probably nothing more than a thick-tailed bush baby. Apparently, several members of the local Ramadzahila family were awoken in the middle of the night by a small creature scrambling across the roof. Looking at it, the family was scared, as they felt it had certain human-like features. Alerting the rest of the village, the entire community stood guard outside the house to prevent the mystery beast from getting away. Whilst they tried and failed to capture the animal by enticing it down from the roof, one of the men present climbed up onto the house and hit the animal on the head with a stone, killing it. Examining it back down on the ground, it was of the general opinion it had the hands and genitals of a man and was furry like an animal, so must have been a Tokoloshe sent out to do evil by a witch or a sorcerer. A local traditional healer was of a far different opinion. When asked about the case, he stated that the Tokoloshe had been sent out to the Ramadzahila family by their ancestor spirits, indicating that one of them was called to be a shaman. Zoologists who were shown pictures of the creature stated it was just a bush baby. However, no actual corpse was left available. To ensure this identification, as the villagers performed a magical ritual upon it and hurled it into a nearby river, the river sprite sent back to its watery realm. Some Tokoloshes, however, could never be mistaken for real-life animals, such as the little porridge people placed on sale in recent years by a 63-year-old African witch doctor named Shadrach Madakana. Witches and wizards like Mr. Madakana are meant to use Tokoloshes as their familiars, a breed of demonic animal assistant sent out to help them in their evil schemes. Or on the other hand, such persons sometimes offer to sell or rent out the services of their beast slaves to others in return for a nice fat fee. Shadrach Madakana was one of the latter class. Shadrach claimed to sell people little homemade models of Tokoloshes, which when planted in the ground would come to life and bring their owners wealth. Madakana, who lived in the Eastern Cape province city of Port Elizabeth, seemed to have a very good grasp of keeping manufacturing costs down and selling his products at an uncorrespondingly high price. His little men were made out of substance as cheap as porridge and then sold on for absurdly high prices ranging from 15,000 to 25,000 South African rand, approximately 1,100 to 1,900 pounds in English money. Looking at the model Tokoloshes, which Madakana allowed to be photographed, these little beings are not particularly convincing. It looks like a small child's plasticine model of a midget with two round green blobs of vegetation stuck in it for eyes. However, according to Madakana, rather suspiciously, the zombie porridge men are well worth the investment. The Tokoloshe is deadly, he explained, telling a tabloid newspaper how livestock farmers make good use of his products, employing them as slaves to herd their sheep, goats and cattle. As such, they sold like hotcakes. They could be used to bring a man riches, expand businessmen's empires, or to cause the downfall of your enemies. All you had to do was buy a porridge zombie from him and then bury it in your yard. Madakana would also give you some unnamed magical substance which you then had to rub all over your naked body while standing up on the Tokoloshe grave, presumably at such a time of night that nobody would be able to see you doing it. After a month, Madakana said, the planted Tokoloshe would grow up to be the size of a toddler and raise itself out from the ground. You'd be able to tell, because the Tokoloshe would look strong, have a beard, and only one eye in the middle of his forehead. You would does have a small stone, like a marble, to keep inside his mouth in order to render himself invisible. The little man would be your slave, but nonetheless you'd better watch out. If the being's owner should die, the demon would break loose and become very violent, warned by the Kana. In his own words, once this event comes to pass, the liberated Tokoloshe rapes the kids or pokes the wife of his owner. He will do this until the whole family is dead. Quite the design flaw. There are even now various subspecies of Tokoloshe on the loose in southern Africa. Most notably a very curious being known as the Pinky, whose highly niche habitat of choice is living inside school toilets. Belief in the bold-dwelling entity is largely confined to South Africa, where it first began to appear in the early 1990s. A breed of albino Tokoloshe, the Pinky was meant to be either all white or all pink, or half male, half female. It wore trousers down one side of its body and a dress down the other, and half human, half animal. Cat-like features down one side of its face, and having the mouth and chin of a snake. Like its more well-known cousin, the Pinky was another prime candidate for the African Sex Offenders Register, seeing as its main character trait was that it either enjoyed raping schoolgirls who were wearing pink knickers, or simply stealing pink underwear from underage girls, hence the name Pinky. As its main interest was supposed to be girls, only they could see the being. Boys going to the toilet would experience its presence by being slapped or scratched on the cheek by invisible claws. Adults, needless to say, could never set eyes upon the beast. White school children invented this entity. It was their black counterparts who ran with the idea. Schools were closed, children became hysterical, and the press began reporting on supernatural attacks allegedly taking place in toilets, causing even some adults to start believing. The most widely reported Pinky scare occurred in Motorele Primary School in the Black Township of Mamelodi, just north of the city of Pretoria, in 1994. Here the scare became so bad, or, depending on your interpretation, so exciting, that every child in the school was soon claimed with an encounter. Teachers were sceptical, but the pupils were beyond their control, so they had to call the police. Lieutenant Elias Maswele arrived at the establishment, having been told there was a case of child molestation. I don't think he particularly bargained on what kind. Children frantically told him tales of girls being raped and slapped about, and of boys having their socks stolen from them. The monster, they told him, was living in the toilets, so Maswele went in and investigated. Found nothing. Well, the children were unsurprised. Pinky would not appear to adults. They told Maswele to wait outside while they chanted a song they'd invented to conjure up the demon. It goes like this. My name is Pinky, I live in the toilet. My father is a Sangoma, witch doctor, and my mother is a witch. Once they had finished, the kids began screaming and poured out the toilets, so the summoning probably worked. A concerned parent had arrived on the scene and went into the toilets armed with a monkey wrench, intending to kill Pinky. He soon came running out himself too, having claimed an invisible being had touched him in the cubicle. Yeah. The next day, a mob of angry parents arrived, demanding the loos be burnt down in order to kill the Pinky and cleanse the place of evil. Outraged with the presence of demonic forces in the school, the irate adults started calling their children out and subjecting them to cross-examination about what exactly they had seen. They soon discovered, however, every child had experienced something totally different. The stories had no correspondence to each other. Some said he had elephant legs, some said he had cow's hooves, others chicken legs. A few said the Tokoloshe was friendly and would dance for you if you asked it, whilst others claimed it had threatened to chop their legs off and take them away with it to mend its child, who presumably had done none of its own, so not exactly friendly then. It became obvious The kids were just making it all up, and the mob dispersed, thankfully leaving the school toilets intact. The scare briefly resurrected itself a few days later, when a parent claimed Pinky Pinky had made her son levitate through the air and burned his hand by sticking it to a hot geyser. However, it later transpired that it was a pathetic attempt of a woman to cover up the fact she was physically abusing the boy. Pinky Pinky disappeared from Mamelodi Primary, but this didn't prevent him popping his head up through the toilet bowl elsewhere. Perhaps the next time your child goes to the toilet, he or she will see Pinky Pinky for themselves. Why do so many Africans believe in the Tokoloshe? It's not because they're all primitive and stupid, as some patronising persons may try and argue. After all, most Africans themselves would probably laugh at those Westerners who believe David Icke's claims that Her Majesty the Queen is a giant, shape-shifting, alien, paedophile lizard from the lower fifth dimension. Is that particular Western belief any less weird or outlandish than the Tokoloshe? Throughout Southern Africa, witchcraft, magic, and the supernatural are believed in far more widely than they are in the West. Some African leaders have believed openly in witchcraft and magic themselves. Yahya Jammeh, former dictator of the Gambia, notoriously believed he could magically cure AIDS by magical means involving bananas. For example, whilst Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe once sent his underlings to investigate an allegedly haunted boulder which supposedly contained an infinite supply of petrol being gifted to Comrade Bob from the spirit world. Yes. Some high-status political figures also believe in Tokoloshe. One such official person that expressed such open belief was KK Manyinka, the former Director of Security for the Zimbabwean Parliament, who, in 1999, claimed an employee with a grudge had sent out invisible Tokoloshes to attack him. He said he had suffered car crashes, lightning strikes, and physical assaults, all at the hands of Tokoloshes who had been invoked against him by a man whom he had intended to fire. According to Manyika himself, I was assaulted by invisible Tokoloshes as I walked along the road. They were beating me about the head, shouting, you are an unfair boss, you want too much money. They were trying to knock me into the road so I'd be run over by a car. However, they ultimately failed to do so. Well, if only some of you could have been prevailed to stand out similar things against Robert Mugabe. The idea became a widespread urban legend during the period leading up to the 1994 elections. As to the rumour that, in the rural areas of South Africa, the ballot papers had been altered so the person had to put a cross inside a circle rather than a square box, because otherwise the voters would be terrified that there would be tiny Tokoloshes hiding inside the ballot papers. Some commentators have been unsure as to how seriously all these should have been taken. An alternative view of that alleged scare is that it didn't actually happen. These comical myths were not actually believed by the black people at all, but were simply a kind of wishful thinking on the part of the whites, who would like to believe that blacks are too superstitious or backwards to run a country. Of course, it turns out black people could indeed fill political positions with distinction, as was proved by Nelson Mandela. But whilst Mandela won equal rights for black people, why didn't he gain equal treatment for Tokoloshes too? This isn't a joke. Tokoloshes can act as a kind of social metaphor, through which awkward social or political issues can be expressed and explored through a supernatural prism. In the famous 1994 elections, the first in South African history where blacks were allowed to cast their vote, many white people were nervous about the idea of Nelson Mandela and his ANC colleagues coming to power, and attempted to make use of the belief in Tokoloshes in order to skew the vote. Reputedly, there were many strange fears amongst the black populace at the time. One was that evil Tokoloshes were hiding inside polling booths, waiting to observe those who voted for the ANC, intending to come out to their homes and attack them later, or were taking over black people's minds when they were marking their crosses, making them vote for white parties instead. Another related belief was that Tokoloshes liked to hide in corners, and as such it was only safe for a black person to cast their vote outside a polling booth which was round, where there was nowhere for them Tokoloshes to lurk. It also seems there were some real-life cases where Tokoloshes have expressed a desire to be given non-human rights in the new South Africa too. In September 1998, a committee of prominent Tokoloshe had made a visitation to a South African woman and demanded they be given equal rights with human beings by the hypocritical and clearly highly racist ANC government. According to a 42-year-old special needs teacher named Themba Bekebu of Queenstown in the Eastern Cape province, 5 Tokoloshes visited her home one night, complained they didn't have the same housing rights as black and white people. These strange people, with only heads and no facial features, are demanding houses like all the other people in the country, she said. In the post-apartheid era, the state of affairs could not be right, and the Tokoloshes sat down on the woman's sofa and insisted their grievances be passed on to Nelson Mandela himself. Mrs. Bekebu obliged and contacted the President's office by telephone. However, the staff member who answered refused to take the matter any further unless he could speak directly to the head of the Tokoloshe tribe, who was not willing to comply, and the matter was politely dropped. Bekebu called the police and reported her problem, as it seemed the Tokoloshe were refusing to leave her residence until their demands were met. None of the policemen took her seriously, and when a local reporter visited her home, he found her distraught and down on the floor, desperately pushing a receiver beneath the couch so that the police could hear the Tokoloshes talking to each other. There was only silence. And the reporter didn't see the homeless Tokoloshes with his own eyes either. If these particular Tokoloshes were real, they were only real to Mrs. Bekebu. But surely not everyone was claimed to have seen or spoken to a Tokoloshe as mad. Ultimately, it seems the problem of the reality or otherwise of the Tokoloshe is meaningless. Whilst there are certain poltergeist-like hauntings or other odd experiences which might be taken as some kind of evidence of the Tokoloshe's authenticity, the conception of the spirit overall is so amorphous and constantly shifting that the question of its literal existence or otherwise is almost pointless and unanswerable. If someone were to ask you whether Tokoloshes were real, then would you be talking about poltergeist Tokoloshes, zombie-like Tokoloshes, porridge-like Tokoloshes, knicker-stealing, toilet-dwelling Tokoloshes, UFO-piloting alien Tokoloshes, or misidentified monkey-like Tokoloshes? Tokoloshe, in his multiplicity of possible and self-contradictory identities, is in many ways the African cousin of the European fairy, of whom hundreds of local and differing variations are supposed to exist. If you were to ask a person from the past whether they thought fairies were real, they might ask you whether you meant leprechauns, pixies, lutins, hobs or brownies. Overall, the Tokoloshe's polymorphous nature is his most significant quality. It makes him so useful to the modern African mind. If he's invisible and can take on many different forms, as he often does, he can quite easily be used as a simple, instant, shorthand explanation for phenomena or alleged phenomena as diverse as witchcraft, wet dreams, murder, the birth of disabled children, sightings of UFOs and unusual animals, or the person's success and lack of in business. So, could fairies and other spirits in the not-so-distant European past? Many Westerners, however, don't feel they need supernaturalised explanations for such things in light of the currently prevailing materialistic worldview we're all now brought up to believe. But many Southern Africans, who still live in communities where witchcraft and the supernatural are not superstition, but everyday social reality, they still do. Fortunately then, for all such needs, they have available to them in the strange but fascinating figure of the Tokoloshe. If you would like to learn more, then please buy Terror of the Tokoloshe by Stephen Tucker, now available for CFZ Press, from which this talk was adapted. There are plenty more weird and obscene stories within, such as encounters with giant ghost crabs and what to do when you find yourself being sodomized in the middle of the night by a man with the head of a hippopotamus.